Since Charlie Kirk's deplorable assassination that I condemn in the strongest possible terms, nearly every pocket of the internet has had something to say on the topic. Officials have released statements condemning the assassination and sending praise to Kirk's family. Many people began sharing school shootings and political violence statistics to disprove the currently trending myths that political violence only comes from one side of the aisle. Unfortunately, many people also ran to social media in hopes that they will expand their platform and influence by capitalizing on angry people, where they began stoking the fires of conflict by inciting civil war, advocating for violence, and lying about the shooter and their motives without issuing retractions and apologies when they turned out to be wrong. Some of the people condemning Kirk's assassination are also explicitly or implicitly fine with political violence. They're simply upset that it was their guy who got hit. One of the pockets of the internet that I exist in where this took place are the VTuber spaces, where people use their anonymity to, at best, exacerbate the culture war that caused Kirk's death, and at worst seem to encourage Americans to go out on the streets and die for the cause. They themselves, of course, will not be marching alongside you because they don't want to martyr themselves, they simply want to use your death as currency. Very fatherless behavior, but there seems to be a lot of that going around nowadays. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like and subscribe. I'm going to start us off hot with one of the most prominent names in VTuber right-wing circles, Kirsche. Kirsche feels very strongly about this situation, has been tweeting and talking about it somewhat relentlessly since the event took place. She's released a number of tweets ranging from retweeting anti-trans racist comics, which turned out to be wrong because the shooter isn't trans or black. She retweeted a witch hunt against a trans person who insane internet netizens determined was most likely the shooter. Spoiler alert, she wasn't, and Kirsche was once again wrong with no retraction or apology, tweeting out that the evil needs to be destroyed, which we all know what that means given her other tweets, and then playing the victim in a typical rightoid fashion to silence all reasonable criticism of her wilding out. There's a lot to unpack there, and a lot of things that would be worthwhile to spend a few minutes talking about. But that being said, Kirsche retweeting incorrect information, blaming somebody who's innocent and then not apologizing for it, isn't exactly breaking news. That's what you can expect from the 5-minute attention span content creators that are very popular nowadays. It's far from the most damning thing here. The most damning thing, in my opinion, about all of this is that Kirsche herself has explicitly and implicitly, in a more cheeky manner, supported political violence in the past. We have quite a few examples of this, so here's a tweet of Kirsche celebrating Otoya Yamaguchi, a right-wing ultranationalist who in 1960 went on stage and assassinated Inejiro Asanuma, the chairman of the Japanese Socialist Party. Kirsche celebrated this event several times. Kirsche likes the fact that a man was gutted on the stage because Kirsche doesn't like the politics of the man who was gutted on the stage. Now, I myself think that both Otoya Yamaguchi and Tyler Robinson, the person who killed Charlie Kirk, should be spat on and condemned for what they did. Kirsche, on the other hand, doesn't seem to believe that's the case. She thinks that Robinson did a bad thing because of political killing, but Yamaguchi did a good thing because of political killing. If the person on stage was not a far-right pundit like Charlie Kirk, but rather a far-left pundit, and everything else that happened was identical, Kirsche would probably be flicking her bean for 2 nights straight. Because she doesn't give a shit that a person was killed in the name of politics, she's just unhappy that it was her guy who got hit. Kirsche had an opportunity to walk this back when she was criticized for it, and what she did instead is welcome donations praising her for her stance and kept memeing about how communists aren't people. I personally don't like communism. I do, however, like freedom of speech and freedom of expression. Kirsche doesn't like any of those things because she believes that you deserve to be gutted in public if you have the wrong kind of politics.
And then I saw people like going around posting like my tweet from the anniversary of that Japanese commie getting fucking gutted on a stage. Like, yeah, communists aren't people, but I also don't go around throwing the word communist at everyone who disagrees with me.
Thank you, thank you.
German Candy has made me aware of your opinion on Otoya Yamaguchi and communists, and I am shocked and disappointed in myself that I didn't fall in love with you sooner.
Aw, that's sweet of you. That's sweet of you.
I thought about it. I was like, I wonder if I should quote retweet one of these with that image that says, someone asked, like the soldier. I was like, someone asked me how it felt to take human life, and I said, I don't know, I've only ever killed communists, but I was like, maybe I don't want more PR heat on me right now. Maybe I just leave this one alone. maybe
I know what you're thinking, but Chris, those are short, out-of-context clips, Chris. She even said that she's careful with who she applies the label of communist to, Chris. She might be, which I don't believe to be clear, but her audience certainly isn't. I argued this point with 3 separate Kirsche stands so far. You can find all of those exchanges on my social media, which when they realized I got them cornered because Kirsche does want to kill communists, and presumably anyone who identifies as a communist, they ended up wanting me dead. I'm a capitalist, but you disagree with Kirsche, you disagree with wanting commies dead, and suddenly a part of our own audience wants you to die. So let's not be idiots and let's look at the timeline we've got here. Charlie Kirk gets shot and dies. Kirsche tweets out that you don't make peace with evil, you destroy it. We all know what that means. A day later, FBI releases footage of the potential shooter. People on the internet find a trans person who looks a little bit like an unfocused grainy picture of the shooter, and they post all of this trans person's social media. Kirsche retweets that. That turns out to be someone completely unrelated to the shooter that these people have simply just decided to put a target on. Kirsche doesn't retract, Kirsche doesn't clarify, Kirsche doesn't do anything about the fact that she just put someone innocent at risk. Maybe she clarified on her stream, I wouldn't know, I don't watch any of those, but she didn't do it anywhere that isn't her own personal echo chamber. We can all obviously appreciate that Kirsche can't come out and say certain things out loud because she operates on platforms that have terms of service that, if she said what she truly believes, would end up with her getting banned. However, there are more examples of Kirsche flirting with political violence in general. In 2023, a 77-year-old Kenneth Darlington was stuck in traffic when anti-mining protesters in Panama blocked the road. He walked out of his vehicle, started arguing with the dipshit protesters, and then gunned 2 of them down. I travel to work by car. Fucking hate it when people block the road. I think it's insane, unhinged, and deplorable to start shooting them though. Kirsche described Darlington as a reasonable man doing an unreasonable thing. A reasonable man walked out of his car, got into a fight with protesters, killed 2 of them on the spot. Reasonable, because Kirsche believes that you inconveniencing motorists warrants a death sentence. Over the last couple of days, Kirsche has also taken it upon herself to enact cancel culture on various industry professionals who have celebrated Charlie Kirk's death. I'll be honest with you, I don't think I principally have a problem with that. Maybe a little bit at most. There's this dude, the CEO of CI Games, I think it's called, the company that made Lords of the Fallen. I don't buy any of his games because he's a weird bigot, and I wouldn't know that he's a weird bigot if it wasn't pointed out to me. I don't think he should be fired, which I believe is a big difference between me and Kirsche in this case, but I don't like him. If Kirsche wants to do what far-left activists have done historically, then that's her prerogative, I suppose. It doesn't surprise me at all because Kirsche is very similar to far-left activists, she just happens to be far right. It's 2 sides of the same coin really, the longer you analyze it for. What does bother me a bit though are cases where you're not allowed to make any comments about Kirk or else she's going to call the manager. That at least seems to be the case here, where Alana Pierce is laughing in disgust at the idea of comparing Charlie Kirk to Martin Luther King, which she gets called out for, and Kirsche is reposting that. Maybe I'm reading into it a bit too much, it is after all a single repost, but Kirsche is currently very much on board with wanting to destroy the lives of anyone who is celebrating the event, and I have a feeling that a lot of these freaks would consider you being uncomfortable with comparing Kirk to Martin Luther King to be equivalent to celebrating Kirk's death. Here's another example of this exact same thing happening, this time via Libs of TikTok, which Kirsche reposted. Libs saying, Jasmine Maraguya is a suicide prevention coordinator for the Colorado Department of Health. Here she is justifying the killing of Charlie Kirk. Your tax dollars pay her salary. Do you know what the problem here is? Nowhere in her Facebook post is Jasmine celebrating Kirk's death. She's just not sorry that he died. I'm sure that's the same thing to a lot of these people, but she isn't celebrating his death, and the idea that Kirsche is so lost in the sauce that she can't see that is a problem. Let's read Jasmine's posts together and see what we think. If you haven't said anything about the countless mass shootings, school shootings, or shit about ICE raids, Palestine, Black Lives Matter, and the violation of rights of LGBTQIA folks, women, or folks without access to shelter, food, clean water, but want to talk about how we should not feel or react to how a pro-gun, pro-violence dude died via gunshot, literally shut the fuck up and talk to yourself. Do some self-reflection and interrogation of why you speak up for a white man who spews horrid shit against every marginalized community. No heart? Please look at who and what you're speaking up for. Now look, you don't like this? Fair enough. You have issues? Fair enough. You even want to call this out? Knock yourself out. Bit weird, but you do you. But at no point in any of this is she celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, or is she justifying it. What she's doing at best is using Charlie Kirk as a cudgel against folks who feel like you should find all of this sympathy and empathy inside of you to be very kind to him now that he's died, whilst these exact same folks weren't kind to other people who have died. Again, you want to find this distasteful? By all means, but she is not justifying the killing of Charlie Kirk. The reason why I'm sighing out a little bit over this is because Kirsche retweeted how destroying the lives and careers of people celebrating this political murder is essential. It's just a shame that she doesn't draw the line at celebrations and is actively taking part in doing the same to people who simply had a more nuanced stake than Charlie Kirk was a hero. Do you guys remember when George Floyd was murdered and people, Kirsche herself by the way, were pointing out that even though he shouldn't have been murdered, they have only so much empathy for a violent criminal? If Kirsche was a leftist at that point in our history, she'd want you to be hunted down on the streets for that belief. What's the difference between her and like a historic SJW? There's one final Kirsche tweet that I want to show you, and it's a compilation of Hassan calling for violence, where Kirsche calls out the Twitch's double standard. I believe that Hassan should be banned. I think he's a pretty disgusting person. The only problem is that so should Kirsche. She's not angry that Twitch has a double standard, she's just angry that this double standard does not favour her. If she was in Hassan's position, she would be just as bad as he is. Kirsche preys on the annoyances and fear that everyday people have and then weaponizes it against her enemies. Charlie's body wasn't even cold yet, and we had no idea who the shooter is or what their motives are when Kirsche was already on Twitter stoking the fires of culture war. She claims to oppose cancel culture, but is happy when the right people get cancelled. She's upset that Kirk got murdered, but she's very happy and chipper when the right people get murdered. In her own paraphrased words, it's never been hyperbole, it's her making you an acceptable target. With this, we move on to another Muppet, Rev says Desu. A man who used to put cropped hentai in his thumbnails to get as many clicks as possible, then turned to culture war commentary and finally found Jesus in his life and became an increasingly insufferable prick with very few consistent values since then. I made a video a while ago where Rev and his wife got very emotional and sent a wave of harassment to a much smaller content creator because that content creator made a joke where she crucified herself on stream, and because Rev and his wife are religious zealots, they wanted to make her suffer for it. You'd think that comedy is legal again, but that doesn't seem to apply to any jokes that might potentially be religiously insensitive if Rev or Strawb are within the earshot. Now, Rev and his wife are emotional once again, and once again are displaying the absolute lack of values that they have. Mighty Keith made a Twitter post about how he considers Charlie Kirk evil on account of his politics and will not mourn him, but that he doesn't believe Charlie should have been murdered, and there's no excuse for these kinds of political killings. I don't know who Mighty Keith is or what his broader politics are, but his exchange with Rev doesn't mention anything but the tweets I'm about to show you, so I'll stick to those. Strawb, Rev's wife, took issue with how he described Charlie Kirk as evil and wanted an explanation. I use the word wanted very loosely because Rev and his wife will never accept a conversation on any topic that makes them emotionally uncomfortable because they're deathly terrified of real-time confrontation where they can't use their audience to brigade whoever they disagree with. Keith blocked Rev's wife because he has no intention to talk to bad faith people pretty much immediately, but if I was to steelman why he considers Charlie Kirk evil, it would probably have something to do with Keith being black and Charlie Kirk having throughout his entire career said thousands of weirdly racist things about black people, with some of the Hall of Famers being that passing the Civil Rights Act and giving black people rights was a mistake and that black people were better off during the heights of segregation. You don't have to lie about Kirk's politics to still make it clear that he shouldn't have been shot, so that's what Keith did. And you can disagree with Keith about Charlie Kirk being evil, that's not a problem either. Rev, upon realizing that Keith blocked his bad faith wife and moved on, decided to pounce and accuse him of condoning political violence. Keith repeatedly makes it clear that Charlie should not have been shot, but Rev doesn't care. Rev is in his fifis mode. Rev is very in tune with the morality of the world ever since Jesus told him to find love in his heart, so now he goes around putting targets on people by accusing them of supporting political violence when they very explicitly and clearly to anyone who can read did not support political violence. This isn't the first time that Strawb got Rev in trouble either, and frankly, Strawb being a religious zealot going after people while being unwilling to entertain the possibility that she's just wrong isn't new either. It would be endearing that he goes in to defend his wife like this if he wasn't such a disgusting freak when he does it. Now that Kirk is dead, you either agree that he was an angel and the most lovable human being who should be immortalized as humanity's loveliest cupcake, or you support political violence. Those are the only two options in the world of religious Rev, says Desu, his way or the highway. I've included Rev in this video because he's a huge content creator and warrants criticism, but to be genuinely honest with you, out of all the folks I talk about, he's objectively the least bad. What he did is still fucked up, but at least he draws the line somewhere. Admittedly, I think that if his new favourite imaginary friend told him to draw that line elsewhere, he'd grab a hold of a sword and begin the next crusade, but until that happens, he's fairly docile and isn't calling for violence. He's simply accusing other people for calling for violence if they have a disagreement. There were plenty of smaller VTubers too that had something to say. Here is Akemi Kurai, the same Akemi that I made a video about the other day that created the VTUBERS VTuber group for edgy girlies that she invited a Groiper Nazi into who was using a voice changer because he was a man, and that was ultimately the reason why the group came apart in literally a couple of days. I mean the reason being that he was a Nazi, not that he was using a voice changer. I don't think that's particularly rare nowadays. Akemi Kurai, who is the daughter of a federal employee and lives a very insulated life, is now radicalized and ready to pull the trigger to fight the evil wokies. She's telling you to stop being cooked, to stop being a pacifist, and that violence is the answer. When pressed on this, Akemi said that she could pull the trigger if needed, and wouldn't hesitate for a second if put in situation of life or death. A little while ago, when the entire Nachisu Miku drama that I just mentioned was happening, a lot of information about Akemi leaked. A lot of details about her life became public knowledge, and while I don't intend to share much of it, what is worth noting is that Akemi is a socially handicapped social justice warrior hiding behind her keyboard. She used to be very much a left-winger, and when she was that, she'd tweet and make Facebook posts about it, and now that she's realized the right-wing grift pays better, she's a far right-winger, and she tweets and makes Facebook posts about it. There's no history of hers that I am aware of where she did anything with her life that would indicate that if shit hits the fan, she'd actually stand alongside you with a gun. I feel like stronger words are warranted when the person in question is calling for a civil war and is saying that violence is the only answer. At worst, Akemi is going to run out of breath by the time she's out the front door. At best, the only triggers she pulls are the ones in her head when she starts obsessively tapping her sausage fingers against the keyboard after she finds out yet another post to be offended by. I'm sorry, but I don't get how this woke right here is any different to the radical left-wing crazy blue-haired socially inept nuts or whatever you want to call them that you'd find all over these feminist wrecked compilations from the 2020. If you kept everything about how Akemi operates identical but made her a left-winger instead, the exact same people who were supporting her would be relentlessly bullying her for being a pathetic, attention-seeking idiot. These people are fundamentally unserious. Not everyone we're going to talk about today are VTubers. Some simply exist in VTuber or VTuber-adjacent spaces, and they're more like Twitter glup shitos, I guess. V-tweeters is what some of them are called, others you can simply call cunts. One of these is the Dragon's Treasure, a very weird dude who sells tea and uses a ton of AI art to incentivize you wanting to buy a specific flavor of tea by giving it an appearance of a soulless anime waifu. Strawb, the same Strawb as earlier, tweeted out a perfectly fine and respectable tweet that goes like this. We must reject political violence. If you disagree with someone, you don't harm them, and you certainly don't murder them. I am so disgusted with this world, and seeing people cheer, God help us all. Perfectly good tweet. I'd even click the like button if she didn't block me ages ago for calling her out and having a double standard. The Dragon's Treasure quote tweeted her and said, with all due respect, you are wrong and you need to stop. Only one side has rejected political violence, the other side has used it constantly. When one side is fighting a war and the other side is dying in the war going, I hope no war breaks out, that makes one side false. Reject posts like these. This mindset will get us nowhere. It will only get us more bodies. Before we delve deeper, and there's a lot of deep diving we're about to do, here's a solid baseline you can apply to both right-wingers and left-wingers. If you have a very broad categorization, such as political violence, as is the case here, and anyone, and I mean anyone, tells you that one side has rejected this and the other uses it constantly, you're dealing with a brain-dead cretin who needs a social worker to help them wipe their ass. Strawb responded with, again, a very reasonable take. I will never support killing people with different political opinions than me. This death was senseless and wrong. I will never become radicalized to that point. It is not the answer. Jesus cannot come back soon enough. This world is so evil. On a side note, I think that if Jesus did come back, MAGA Republicans would probably kill him on day one, but that notwithstanding, the dragon's tea claps back. This is what you people don't understand, and frankly, I'm at my limit of patience with this. Different political opinions is an idiotic and outdated view of viewing what has been going on. This isn't about taxes or policy. This is far, far beyond politics. Trying to call what is going on right now merely politics is both insulting and ignorant. I don't expect you to do the things that will need to be done, but for fuck's sake, don't morally grandstand like you're a good person because you want nothing to keep being done. I love the little I don't expect you to do the things that will need to be done, because not only is this a very strong call for violence, but this miserable wanker isn't going to do any of these things either. I think it's a bit funny how we've truly come full circle from the leftist firebombing Walmart meme. How can you be this pathetic? Rev jumped in asking what is wrong with the T-Man, which, spoiler alert, probably quite a lot, and then he responded with, nothing is wrong with me, I'm simply not being a coward. You don't have to do the things that will need to be done, Rev, and I don't mean that as any form of insult, but don't get on your high horse with those who are done with being shot and stabbed. It does not make you a good person. Once again blasting the you won't do what needs to be done. I bet you this goes so hard if you have the mental capacity of a 13-year-old. And also, Rev won't do that. The T-Nut thinks that what needs to be done is something that Rev is explicitly against. Rev isn't advocating for violence. Rev has never advocated for violence. Rev is fundamentally unviolent. I don't like Rev, and I don't like his wife, but both of them are against violence, and both of them are correct. T-Man, on the other hand, is a miserable cave troll who looks to be pushing 40 and can only ever get the attention he's been desperately craving for years when he goes on Twitter to make veiled calls for violence. And it gets worse, because these freakazoids just can't help but to incriminate themselves. Here's a post where he says that he's been holding back, actually. Had to delete a post earlier for quote-unquote incitement. Believe it or not, I actually have been holding back my words and my rhetoric by a notable degree. I'll continue letting the righteous fury build up as I remember there's still work to be done, need to put up a new T and finish the next YouTube video, but I will not forget. Oh, you're true. The work needs to be done. You've got Civil War at 12, and before that, at 11, you've got a new YouTube video, and at 10, you need to put up a new T on your website. Jesus fucking Christ, these people are so pathetic, man. I actually don't understand. I just don't get them. I legitimately don't get these people. Is this too many meds? Is this not enough meds? Do they need to be hospitalized? Like, it's just... Figuring out what the fuck is going on in their brain is just a mystery, and I don't know if we'll ever truly know. Anyway, here's another example of how Stockings Mill Coffee posted his own address to challenge people to fight him, and T-Nut thought that he instead doxed a person who poked fun at Charlie's death. Thinking that this was a dox, the Dragon's Treasure response was, this is the correct response. Find these people. Ruin their lives. Make them regret everything. If you disagree with this, I might actually hate you as a human being at this point. The post from Leshy is very clearly disgusting. You don't have to like it, I don't like it, but how can you be an American and feel like someone should get doxed for speech alone? This is so disgusting. And then you've got a dose of just low IQ on top, because why not? The Dragon's Treasure, yet another morning where I wake up thinking I can start moving away from the current culture war issues and back to anime and tea posting. Then I find out certain folks are trying to attack my business, my very livelihood, behind the scenes. Again, when we win, Do not forget that these people want you broke, dead, etc. I'm not going to forget. He's tweeting all of this from his business account. He is using his tea company as his personal Twitter account, then he's angry that his takes are creating people who attack his business. He made a post talking about how if you buy his tea, he will be able to arm himself for what's coming, and given his rhetoric of what needs to be done too. And then he's angry at people who target his business when he himself is the business. You can't make this up. It's so pathetic to look at. Just ew, brother. Ew. And I'll end talking about him with the soyest note of them all. You know, if you have a problem with what I have been saying the past few days and don't want a public back and forth, my DMs are always open. That being said, you want to talk about me when I'm not aware or there to say anything about it? I don't appreciate it. Little bro makes public statements, goes after people publicly, endorses doxing of people publicly, and is constantly publicly talking about bringing about the next wave of political violence. And then he tweets out saying that he doesn't appreciate people talking about him without him knowing. All of these people are a weak fucking breed, the lot of them. Bad times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create bad times. And Elon Musk buying Twitter created so many fuckwits on my timeline. Now look, if you want to call out people actively celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, then go for it. I have no beef with that. I don't support the people celebrating, and if you want to go after them, knock yourself out. I'd rather you all be normal people, but that's a wish that no genie will take upon themselves. If you want to call people out for making jokes and memes, then I actually agree with Kirsche on this.
All jokes are acceptable, and immediately after a tragedy is typically the best time to make a joke about said tragedy.
I don't expect Kirsche to still agree with a word she said in that clip. After all, we're now talking about laughing at her side and not the evil wokies, so she probably changed her opinion fundamentally. I, however, believe that jokes are fun. I like dark humour. Not everyone's cup of tea, I get that, so I'm usually wary of where I let one rip, but I love dark humour all the same. Humour is a great coping mechanism. What I have a problem with is the insane tribalism, hypocrisy and inability to read that is at play here. Kirsche, an opponent of cancel culture, is going after the jobs of people who dared to laugh at the idea that Charlie Kirk is the same as Martin Luther King. Kirsche, who supports political violence so long as the right targets are chosen, is upset that people with the exact same set of beliefs have targeted one of the people that she's aligned with politically, and she's legitimately oblivious to the slippery slope at play here. Ref says Desu reads a series of posts where a dude literally says, "I do not believe that Charlie Kirk should have been murdered," and then Rev attacks him for supporting the murder of Charlie Kirk. Akemi Kurai and a tea weirdo are talking about how it's time to be violent and go out on the streets, but I know what these people look like. They aren't going to march alongside you. Akemi's parents work in the federal government. If shit hits the fan, she will sit nicely alongside them and wait for the storm to blow over, while the tea creep is going to shut his blinds and jack off to AI porn while people are dying in the streets. All of them have forgotten the face of their father, and these are just 4 nutters that I've chosen to talk about. 2 big content creators and 2 smaller glup shitos. There are so many more people who are exactly like this. They will use your lifeless corpse as a banner to attract more likes and followers. All of these people are using the death of Charlie Kirk to get likes, views and subscriptions. I'll reiterate one more thing very clearly. I do not support any talk about civil war in America. I acknowledge how this video might make you think that I'm now also using the death of Charlie Kirk to get some clicks, and I sure am, but at the very least I won't fucking lie to you about it.